Hey everybody, my name's Olin Budke. I'm your instructor for this U.S. history course. I wanted to introduce myself and say thank you for being a part of this course. I know we're going to be taking on a lot of work. We're taking a U.S. history course that we would normally cover over 15 to 17 weeks, and we're smashing it down into 8 weeks, so half the time, but still the same amount of content. So I'm proud of you already for taking that on over the summer. It shows a lot of commitment in your time and your efforts, and I know it'll pay off for you. So I'm happy to have you in this course, and it's my pleasure to be your instructor as we go through the process. Of course, if there's anything I can do to support you along the way, please always feel free to contact me. I'm here to make sure that you succeed, and as long as you're putting in the time and the work, then we're gonna make that happen. So I wanted to introduce myself. I also wanted to go over a few things to let you know what to expect out of the course over these next 8 weeks, and also touch on a few things that are on the syllabus. And I thought, well, I might as well bring you along on one of my favorite little excursions. I live in Clovis, California. Right now I'm about 30-40 minutes north of that in Auberry, California, at the San Joaquin River Gorge. And it's one of my favorite little places to hop out of town and do a little bit of hiking and a little bit of fishing, although I don't usually catch anything, so it's more hiking. But anyway, you can see it's a beautiful little spot, and so I'm happy to have you here as I make this little trip. Let's get down to the water, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the course. All right, well, here we are where the river opens up into Millerton Lake, and I can actually hear some boats out on the horizon there. It's a beautiful day. It's a warm day. The clouds have opened up, so it's mostly clear skies above us, and the sun is beating down on me with a vengeance right now, as I'm sure you can tell. And I don't have a lot of natural sun protection on the top of my head, as in hair, so it's definitely going to cook me. For that reason, I'm going to keep this relatively short. But again, I just wanted to do something a little different and get us outdoors for this welcome package and introduce you to some of the basics of the course. I'll have a couple other videos that'll introduce you to the syllabus and go over Canvas and introduce you to the course content and some of the themes that we'll be covering. But this is more about introducing you to what we want to achieve, how we aim to achieve it, and why it's important. And so let's start with the why, because everything we do should be built around a good why or a good reason. So if I ask you, why is it important that we take a U.S. history course? The first answer that jumps into some of your heads might be because we have to. And I understand that unfortunately that's probably the reality for some of you, if not most of you. But what I hope is that we can take a bigger picture perspective when we look at why it's important to take an American history course. And if nothing else, I hope by the end of this 8-week course, we'll all have gained a bigger perspective on why it's important. So why is it important? Well, it's important because this is the nation, this is the society in which we live, and really to understand where we are in the present, whether it's socially or politically or economically, we need to understand what's gotten us here, the trajectory of U.S. history. And it's also important to understand that the U.S. history is really made up of multiple histories because it was a very different experience for different people groups. And we need to amplify those voices and understand the diverse perspectives and diverse journeys and experiences that have shaped the course of American history and really led us to where we are today. Look, we're not perfect. We've got things that we still need to fix, but man, you know, over the course of our past, this nation's past, much has been done to rectify some really, really horrific wrongs in our nation's past, and whether it's how the Irish or the Italians were treated, of course African Americans or blacks during the slave trade and during slavery, and all through Jim Crowism and all the way up to the civil rights movement and even beyond, or how Asian Americans have experienced U.S. history, how Native Americans have experienced U.S. history. Certainly these are very different experiences, and we need to understand those diverse experiences and appreciate them and value them, because in many ways they were instrumental in creating the nation in which we now live. You know, easily, I would say, the freest nation, if not one of the freest nations when it comes to individual liberty in the world. And that didn't get there by chance. We didn't get here by chance. It was really people who were excluded pushing back on those boundaries of freedom and expanding the definition of freedom that allows us to live in such a free society today. And so we want to appreciate those journeys and value them. And if we can look into our nation's past as we look at the trajectory of how we got to where we are today, and value those diverse experiences and perspectives that have shaped our country into what we are today, then hopefully we can that much more easily embrace the diverse perspectives, ideas, and experiences of others that we live with today, that we share this nation with. And if we can do that, it doesn't mean we have to agree with each other on everything, but if we can just embrace each other's differing perspectives and learn from them, then we're winning. We're going to be in really good shape as we move into the future, because that is so important to living in harmony and respecting each other and valuing, the cultural differences that make this nation special. So that is the bigger picture why. Let's talk about what we want to achieve. So there are 3 student learning outcomes that we're aiming to achieve. The first is to understand the different migration paths that have created this diverse nation. The second is to look at the revolutionary movement and understand why the colonists broke away from Great Britain. So what were some of the causes of that revolutionary movement? What were some of the ideological origins? And then what are the implications? How have the ideas of the revolutionary movement continued to shape this nation long after the War of Independence was over? And then lastly, we want to get better at analyzing sources and synthesizing data from a variety of sources. And so we're going to be looking at primary sources and secondary sources. Primary sources being texts that were created at or directly around the time of the event or period being studied. Secondary sources being texts that were created much later. So your textbook is a secondary source. We'll be looking at some primary sources in our assignments. And then synthesizing the data from primary and secondary sources to really gain a better understanding of what was taking place during a certain time period of American history, and again, what its causes and implications are. Okay, so those are really the why and the what. Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to achieve it. And really, the how is built around 2 things that I firmly believe in. One is that we all bring something valuable to the table, and the other is that we all learn better as a community. And so let's talk about the first one. We all have different perspectives, different experiences, cultural identities, beliefs, things that really shape us into who we are. And when we are analyzing sources or we're engaging with our peers in discussions, we have that unique perspective to offer. And again, if we're embracing each other's differing perspectives and really trying to understand how someone else sees a text or synthesizes data or really just sees the world in which we live, then we're all going to be better off for it. So I really want you to draw upon your skills and abilities and experiences, your prior knowledge, your cultural identity, and really just your perspective as a whole when you're engaging in discussions, when you create your discussion posts, and when you respond to your peers in a thoughtful way. I, again, also believe that we definitely learn better as a community, and so I'm going to be making my best effort to create a learning community in this course. And I think it's even more important to be active in creating a learning community in an online course, because we don't have that face-to-face time just naturally where we all show up at the same place at the same time. And so we need to find other ways to engage each other and feel that we're part of a learning community and a valued part of a learning community. So many of your assignments are going to be discussion based for that reason. And so again, I'm just encouraging you to be an active part of that community and contribute your own perspective to those assignments, because we'll all gain from that. But hey, I'm excited about this course and I appreciate you being a part of it. And I'm really excited about the learning community we're going to create and the contributions you're going to make to it. Of course, if you have any questions or need anything along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.